All right, hello and welcome to yet another session here at the Gosu Academy. I'm one of the coaches at the Gosu Academy. My name is Nato Safix, and today I was a little bit confused about exactly what topic I should pick, but the people here at the Academy have been nice enough to help me out, and especially you, Dippo, you had a couple of communication-related questions. So could you just say the last thing you said, like just repeat it for the sake of the video? And then I'll answer your question.
It was about how good are calls is it good to implement that you should more put pressure on your voice, the call out, if there's something really important happening in the round, like running up top lane towards mid, and the cave player has to call it's happening this step in the running out mid, so the mid players are ready for it.
Yeah,
Because I feel like there's a lot of comms going on, and sometimes you have to call
emphasize,
things. Yeah.
right? Yeah. Well, I definitely have a strong opinion on this. I think definitely communication was one of my biggest strengths as a pro player, and I think also just in general, Denmark is a country where we take communication very seriously. I think if you had to look at the different countries in Counter Strike, I think most people would agree that the Danish teams probably have the best overall comms. And hang on, let me actually just real quick log off, or at least not get Steam messages anymore. So basically, to rephrase your question a little bit, is that if you are a CT cave player and let's say the T's do the cave smoke, they are running up lane and they are crossing here to heaven, um, should you emphasize it? Like, should you change your tone of voice to make it clear to your teammates that this is really important information? Or should you stay in the same, let's say, relaxed tone of voice so that it, like, you don't, I guess, stress people or fill up the comms? That's, I guess, kind of the question. And my opinion on communication in general is that communication should always reflect the current situation you're in. So what I mean with that is that exactly like you said, let's say, just another example, let's say I am T now and I'm walking with my buddies, we're walking up B, and then my friend walks around the corner and I get shot in the back now. If I tell him someone is behind, no one is going to make a mental note of this. But if I instead say, he's behind, then everyone is going to understand that this is crucial information, right? And this might seem really straightforward and something that doesn't need to be said, but I would say different players have different opinions on this. I would say in pro teams, this like emphasizing is something that you get taught to do. Like it is just something that is happening in professional Counter Strike. So that's an example of communication reflecting the current situation. But also another example of communication reflecting the current situation is I try to teach my girls that I work with in NIP Impact. I try to teach them that if, for example, let's say we go in peak heaven, we get 2 kills, whatever. Now we have double man advantage, and again, our communication should reflect the current situation. If we are in a situation where we have a big advantage, we should most likely have. I guess we should have more control, which allows us to communicate less. You can imagine, like, just take the example where the T's are 5 alive and my team is playing CT. There's a T peeking elbow, and a T peeking A main, and a T peeking whatever cave, and a T peeking heaven, and a T peeking B ramp. All 5 players are potentially getting contact at the same time, and all are going to flood the comms, and all are going to be very stressed, right? But if we have double man advantage, and let's say we're in a 5 versus 3 situation, this scenario can never happen because there can maximum be 3 people pressuring us at the same time. So if you have advantage, a lot of the time it's good to use the advantage you have to also sort of reflect it in the comms. And by doing so, you make it so your teammates don't make a stupid mistake. Like, when you have an advantage, the best thing you can do is don't throw it away. That also seems like something that goes without saying, but I know a ton of players where it's like, we're 5 versus 3, now I know there's a guy on B, so I'm going to just take a straight up fight, because if I win it, we become 5v2, and if I lose it, we're still 4 versus 3. But a lot of times, if you are 5 versus 3, there's already like an 80% win rate round. And really, the only way you lose it is by doing something stupid. Or the opponent's doing something incredible, which is rare. So, if you have an advantage, there won't be as many things to communicate about, and so you can relax a little. And that goes in inverse as well. If my team is 3 alive and the opponents are 5 alive, my communication, in my opinion, should reflect my current situation. So if I'm 3 versus 5, I think most people have heard this rule of thumb, like if you have an advantage, you should probably play a little bit more passive. If you have a disadvantage, or like if the other team has an advantage, you should play a little bit more aggressive. And if you're 3 versus 5, that is kind of the normal thought. You want to risk a little bit more. And risking in a 3v5 could, for example, be, if you have teammates around, you just say, okay guys, come contact B with me. And yeah, that's just another example of communication reflecting the current situation. So yeah, I think absolutely communication should reflect the current situation. And I hope that's an answer to your question. I will say, just for this specific question as well, what you mentioned with people running lane to heaven, basically all teams that I've ever played in, this is kind of a communication life hack, but all teams that I've played in basically have had a keyword for this exact scenario. The cave player says in one word when they can cross this, okay? So my team, for example, has the keyword apple. So if our cave player says apple, it means that the T's can cross cave and go heaven, or they can already be across cave and peek heaven. And that is such an important piece of information that we literally have a keyword for it. Actually, maybe we call it devil. I think actually we call it devil. But I've had it in a previous team that the keyword was apple. We use devil, and then also on ancient, because this is, I've talked about this in previous sessions as well, but crossing this angle for T's is something that generates a lot of pressure. Like, if you bounce a flash, or if you bounce a smoke, okay, not flash like that, but just bounce it off here, or if you bounce a smoke off donut, as soon as T's can cross this angle, and we no longer have information if they can be red room or not, we use the keyword angel. So we have devil, and we have angel. And what would have been really smart, right? Which it's kind of too late for my team, but just if you are thinking of adding these keywords yourself, I recommend making angel the keyword for crossing to heaven, because angels and heaven are kind of connected, and then make devil the keyword for crossing the donut angle, because you get into red room, and hell is red, supposedly. So it's maybe easier to remember by making that association. And also, that's another kind of life hack. We have a lot of like tactics, or we have a lot of, I mean, I guess the easiest way I can explain it is with callouts. That's also about communication. With pillar, for example, this is called pillar because it looks like a pillar. This is called cave because it looks like a cave. This is called donut because this thing on the radar looks like a donut. So if you're making a new tactic, it's good to give it a name that is easy to remember. Kind of a side note of communication, but I don't think I've shared this story before, but I would like to do it now. There was this Danish IGL back in the day. His name was Neon. I guess he's still alive, but he doesn't play Counter-Strike anymore. Or maybe he does, but not professionally at least. And he was kind of famous, or we can even call it infamous, in the Danish scene for being a very strict and let's call it specific in-game leader. And on Dust 2, for example, he would have it that all tactics were named after fruit. So you would have apple, whatever, banana, pear, like so on and so on. And then on another map, I think it was in Further or something like that, it was all men's cologne. So it was like Armani, Diesel, blah, blah, blah. So each map had its own category of tactics. And that kind of does sound nice, but at the same time, it isn't really that nice because you would literally get a situation. I mean, I played with him as well. You could have a situation where you ask, what is kiwi? And then he will say, it's apple without smokes. And then you're sitting there thinking like, okay, but this doesn't help me. Whereas I had another in-game leader who, I believe he is actually the analyst of Mouse Sports now. His name was Netrick, one of the best callers I ever played with. Fantastic guy as well. He had the opinion that to make communication simple, you would want to give a tactic the name that it is. So in my team, for example, when we want to A-pop, we say, let's do the A-pop. When we want to do B execution, we call it, let's do B exec. And this might seem pretty easy, but I feel like a lot of teams actually do this wrong. Like, don't call a mid default SK. Don't call a mid default phase. Like, why make it hard? Like, if you have something where you're flashing out mid from spawn on a timing, call it mid pop. Then you will never have a situation where, like, your IGL calls, let's do mid pop, and then someone says, oh, what is mid pop? That can't happen. But it could happen that the IGL says, let's do phase, and then the player says, okay, what is phase? And then the IGL says, it's the mid pop. But why make it harder than it needs to be? So you can streamline communication in that way. And this is what I said with the keyword that basically all pro teams have. I don't know if all pro teams have this keyword, but probably something similar. It really makes a big difference. So, yeah, communication is pretty deep. I know also one of your questions that were kind of set before the video started, Dippo, was that, well, I'm kind of paraphrasing, I think is the right word here, but I felt you kind of also asked the questions, like the question, is there such a thing as communicating too much? Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And my opinion on that is that, there will always be such a thing as too much communication. But to me, you can only communicate too much if what you're saying isn't valuable, right? So, like, if I'm next to my teammate and I see him peeking B, I can say, I'm with you. If you go up, I will come with you. I'm holding heaven in the meantime. Like, in theory, all these things are helpful for him. And it's his job to be able to play while I'm talking to him. Just as it's my job that I'm able to talk while I'm playing. But if I'm telling him, I'm next to you on B, and then I start saying, I actually had yogurt with banana for breakfast. That's, this is a very extreme example, but an extreme example is typically more easy to understand. That's not valuable information, and then that goes into the category of too much communication. Like, it could also be something like, I don't actually know if I have a good example. I mean, it's hard for me to even think what you could say in Counter-Strike that isn't valuable. That's why I would also say there is almost not a thing such as
I can give
too
an
much
example.
communication. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like if your teammate's the last guy alive, I've seen
Yeah.
this sometimes happen where 4 people are telling him what to do.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Like backseat gaming, that's an example of too much communication, and it's to the detriment of the team. Definitely agree. In general, I would say when you're dead, telling someone what to do, even if you're right, it's typically not a good move. Rather propose it as an idea, like maybe you have timing, or I think you have timing, or whatever. Let the person who you're spectating make their own choice in a round. is typically a good idea.
But it's also more confusing when you got 4 people telling you different things what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
It's
okay, I'll give... Yeah?
It's definitely a good thing that the devil and angel call, because instead of like the GK players telling this whole thing, they're pushing out 3 guys pushing up ramp
Yeah,
instead of like one word, and like it's easier to react. Like,
yes.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna definitely use that.
Yeah.
Introduce that call.
And now that you mentioned it as well, right? Well, actually, real quick, I'll give an example because I came up with an example. Like, let's say I want to piss around and I have bought a decoy, right? If I have bought a decoy and I have a Glock and I'm standing next to my teammate and he's about to go up an entry frag, like let's say he's about to peek short, and as he's getting here, I tell him I have a decoy. Then I would argue that that's just not important because he can't use that decoy for anything. I probably can't use that decoy for anything. And I'm taking away his focus in the most important moment for something that just really is not important at all. Or like, it could be something like if... Oh, actually, I have another good example. It could be something like, I'm standing next to my teammate, he's about to go take a duel, and then I say, the B player has 5 kills and 14 deaths. That's something where, I mean, it's kind of connected to the game, but at the same time, it's just not important information to give. Like, it doesn't help us win the round. Like, I could maybe say that in freestyle if I wanted to give us extra confidence, whatever, or if I wanted to design a round around it. But in the exact round, it really has no impact. And that's too much communication. It's to the point where I'm just talking to talk. But other than that, my personal opinion, there is no such thing. I've never complained about a teammate communicating too much, but I've complained about a million teammates communicating too little. So that's how I see it, at least. And I think that's a really, really important thing to, I feel, hear from someone like me, because it means when you guys go into face it, you can automatically know if someone tells you, stop talking so much, just tell them to shut up. Like, that I've had players in my lobby say that, and I think it happens way more frequently at the lower levels. But yeah, now that I'm pretty high elo and stuff like that, I don't remember the last time I heard someone telling me I talk too much. Like, that just doesn't happen. Because good players, they want any information they can get. So that's the one thing. The other thing I will say is that when I was playing in the team Nordaven, I had already been professional in Counter-Strike for a couple of years. And at some point, the player HS, like the Estonian, he told me, like, NATO, sometimes when you communicate, you make things way more complicated than they need to be. Like, you can tell things in a more simple way. And I did an individual coaching session the other day. I'll try to see if I can remember. It was on DOS 2. And the guy who I was coaching wanted to... I'll even go show you the situation. So that will make it easier. And then I can give you another one of these, like, angel devil keywords, because there's another map where there's a sort of important keyword that I think actually not many pro teams have, but they should have. And if they don't have it, then it's bad. So actually, my guy was CT, and it was a late round. They were 5 versus 2, and my guy was either he was standing here or he was standing here. I don't quite remember. He had an AWP player around the window area, and there was a smoke here, which was about to fade. I think he must have been here. It was like holding the smoke, and then when the smoke was about to fade, he was saying something like, "Hey, Orange, can you leave mid and come over to B and take over my tunnels?" or something. Where it's just like, not only does Orange, like the OP in this case, have to use way more brain power on actually interpreting what does he want me to do, but also it takes way longer and it fills up the communication a lot more. If he just says, "Orange, take my B tunnels," then first of all it's shorter. Orange has needs less time to sort of analyze what did he even ask me, and can therefore react faster. And there was another thing I did. It was kind of hidden. I'll say it once more, and I'll see if anyone knows kind of what I'm alluding to now. So in one of the situations, the guy I coached, he was saying, "Hey, Orange, can you leave mid and come over and take over my B tunnels from window?" Right? And the other one I said, "Orange, take my B." One of them is that it's shorter, but there's another thing I did differently. Anyone noticed it?
The second guy like speaks in imperative. He like orders him pretty much to do it.
Yes, exactly. And that's, I mean, I use the word assertive, right? I was assertive in this case. I told, okay, I'm imagining now that I'm the guy, right? But I didn't really give my teammate a choice here. I told him what to do. I directed him, right? And, you know, there are some players, even top players, who believe that Counter-Strike should be 100% assertive. I get the appeal because if I am an AWP player, for example, this is like the number one thing you will notice if you're playing in a pro team with an AWP player, or if you yourself if you're the AWP player, it's a good thing to learn early, is people will actually go so into detail with you that if you say, I think I want to peek long, that's not good enough. People will tell you, you have to say, I'm peeking long. And the difference there is just in one of them, you're questioning kind of if you should or shouldn't, and the other one, you sound confident. And when you sound confident, that also spreads to your teammates, right? So I would much rather play with an AWP player where he seems like he knows what he's doing, like he or she, basically.
The other thing is also you weren't telling them how to play B. You were just telling them to go to B. So there's less thinking.
Yeah.
Like the first description, I was literally sitting there trying to visualize. Wait, what is he trying to do? How is the map played out? Where is he asking me to go? What is he asking me to watch? What?
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. I'll give you another communication mistake I made when I was a young AWP player. This was something I learned in Sprout. And this is something... Actually, you know what? Before I get to that, I just want to finish my thought with this being assertive. Because I think some people, even top players, as I said, some of them actually think that being assertive 100% of the time is the best. And to those people, you know, they're free to have their opinion. My opinion is, while I like having an assertive AWP player who will be like, I'm peeking this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, whatever, I think there is a lot of power in communicating as well, more openly. So I, for example, if I have a spawn towards B on DOS2, maybe I know I want to peek B, but I want to know if it's a good idea or not. And it can be worth it for me in this case to not be assertive and instead ask my B player, hey, B player, do you think it could be good for me to peek B now? And then by asking that question, the B player will give me this, what I call service info. It's basically like info about your area, right? And this kind of service info, what it gives you is, if the B player knows that they don't do Molotov, they always insta-smoke B. There's literally zero reason for me to start B because I won't find anything. And if I would have just been assertive and said, I'm gonna peek B, you know, then it's kind of still the B player's job to tell me, no, that's a bad idea because they insta-smoke and stuff like that. But I think that can sometimes, by me, instead of being assertive and instead asking my B player directly, hey, is it good if I do this? Some people will take that as a sign that, okay, maybe I'm not fully confident in my peak, whatever. But it can also just be a way of gathering information. And I think, in my humble opinion, is that some, even top players, pro players, whatever, are too laser focused on everything has to be assertive. I do think being assertive is good, especially in hectic situations, right? When there's less time to think. But there is also a lot of value in actually asking other people's advice, because your teammates are there to help you, and they also have information you probably don't have. So it's worth it in that case.
In this topic, it's like utility support. It's like throwing a flash. It's a timing window, but you don't know because you're throwing it for your teammates to peek.
Yeah.
But you don't know if they want to do that or not. So would you ask them, but probably miss the window, or you just throw it while you call and just hope that he would peek on it?
Okay, I think I get what you mean. So I think there's actually a few angles on this. I think, okay, I could go so deep, and I'm just doing it because we can do a whole, like an entire hour or maybe more of communication alone. So I think maybe I've touched on the concept of red, yellow, green flashes before. I've never personally employed this in any of my teams, but I know there are certain pro teams that do this. Probably some have different colors. I think maybe sometimes it's blue instead of one of the colors. I'm not sure. But basically the idea is that, let me see if there's a good example on Anubis. So let's say I am standing here ready to peek. If my guy throws the window flash, right? This window flash is landing in my back. And this is what I would consider a green flash. So my teammate, in this case, you, right? In this question you asked, should I just throw it before kind of getting their acceptance for it? And I think if you throw a green flash, then it's okay. So what is a green flash? A green flash is just a flash that lands behind your teammate. A flash that can never blind your teammate. Like, this flash can never blind me if I'm standing here. It's impossible. Then there is yellow flash. I would use yellow. Some people, I think, use blue. Yellow flash would be something like, let's say I'm standing here and my teammate is doing this flash. Or maybe this flash. Where it's like, okay, not like that, right? But imagine it goes right over the wall. And here it's a little bit more difficult for me to understand, okay, does my teammate get blind by this? Because if he's standing here, then not. But maybe if he's standing at the back wall, maybe he will, right? So a yellow flash is just a flash where you don't really know if it's in front or not. And then a red flash is in front. So if I would be standing here, I would say, okay, I'm flashing. It's a red flash. And then if I'm peeking from here instead, then I know, okay, the flash lands in front of me. Does it kind of make sense how the red, yellow, green flashes work? So green means flash behind. Yellow means flash
safe.
over.
Green means safe.
Yeah. And red means in front.
I get it. But it's like, for example, like Ancient Cave. We have the cave player. There's the stuff happening ramp. There's not so much happening mid. So, but there's a lot of steps. The communication between the mid players and the cave players is not like perfectly accurate at 100% time. So we don't know the proceeding or not. Wood and mid players throwing this lane flash for the cave player to peek. Would you just throw it, even though you would go for it or not?
I think it's best not to waste your flashes. But if you know your cave player is in a position to peek, and also it's even better if it's a teammate you've played with before, you know their tendencies a little bit, right? Like,
yes,
certain cave players will want to peek with their flash, certain players will not want to peek with their flash. If it's someone you know likes to peek on their flash and they are in position to do it, I think you can absolutely offer the flash. My point of explaining the concept of green, yellow, red is that this exact flash you used as an example, we could go on Ancient and visualize it a little bit later, but that is, in my opinion, a green flash, right? Like, you will flash so that the cave player won't be blind by it.
yeah.
Correct?
I'm talking all about green flashes.
Yeah.
It's all safe my teammate, but I don't know if I want to throw away utility for opportunity to get some entries.
I think it's
like the time period that, like, I don't know if I'm asking, it's gonna miss the opportunity kind of stuff.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, I think it's really up to your own read as well. Let me I'll just explain one thing. So basically, when people drop in the water on Anubis, I'll give you a keyword. My team calls it kick-out. So if we know, it's kind of like Devil and Angel on Ancient. If we know that one dropped water, we say kick-out. Okay? And then I will give you an example that you can visualize to answer your question. And then I will get also back to the sprout thing that I was talking about earlier, because that's actually also an Inferno, so that's way easier.
Can I ask you something more? Have
Of
you
course, I love the questions.
Have you been in this scenario when you like feel like they were throwing the flashes or not, or
Yeah,
have you
million
been in that
times.
scenario? Okay, so how about I asking, what worked for you? When did it work? When did you feel like you waited your util?
Yeah.
In what circumstances?
So
You,
I will try to
Yeah.
explain it by showing you, if that's all right.
yeah,
So, I mean, when I joined Heroic, I was starting as AWP, and then at some point I was playing Rifle, and I became a B player, and I was playing with BlameF. And he loved playing out in the sandbags area. I guess that was pretty meta at the time. And so almost every round, I was starting with a flash held up in his back. And as you can imagine on Inferno, when teams want to take top banana, if they do Molotov and nade, sandbags, whatever, there is no time for BlameF in this scenario to call my flash a lot of the time. Yeah? Does it make sense?
yeah, yep.
So it was way more down to my own read, and what was difficult about that was I couldn't see what was going on. I could only hear what was going on, right? Because I was standing like this. And there were times where I wasted a flash by flashing when I thought they were pushing him. There were also times where I should have flashed and I didn't. And I think your example with this lane flash, the way I will answer that is, if you feel like, in the specific example you picked with the lane flash, you said there was not really any action going on in mid. If they are not mid, they are going to be on the sides, right? Either towards A or B. Like, we can agree on that, right?
Yep.
And so I think down to your own read there, I would probably, as a mid player, just flash if my cave player is in position to potentially peek. Like, I would take other things into account as well. Okay, do the T's have AWP? Because if he's just standing in a door and holding cave and heaven peak, there's almost no flash that will blind him properly to the point of your teammate surviving. So that's also something you should take into account. But I think, like, I would flash that lane flash without really even asking your teammate acceptance, let's say, and then he can decide if he wants to peek on it or not, because updating B info there is important. If they're not B, we can all rotate to A, basically. But I think it is a question where there isn't a right and a wrong answer either, because it is just down to the person who is flashing or holding the flash's read. If you feel like your cave player is not under so much stress and pressure, like, if the flash is not urgent, then just offer it to him and he can say yes instead. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But if you think it is, like, if your read is that it is urgent and it would be really good for him to peek immediately, then I think you should throw it before asking and just tell him, like, I'm flashing for you, peek B or something like that. And then if your teammate has a problem with that, it could be also something like, maybe he felt your read of the situation was wrong. Maybe it became super stressed because you didn't offer the flash, and that he would have rather had it on better timing or something. So really, it's, there's no right and wrong answer. I think the person holding the flash there, I mean, that's what being a good support player is understanding. Like, even with the example of lane, I could go into ancient and show you, but basically, like, there is, you could flash lane where it's in his back, but you could also flash kind of over cave. If you flash over cave, then the AWP in the B doors will probably be blind. That's better if they have AWP. But you would rather flash in the back over to the right side if there were rifles there. And so, yeah, that's what a good support player does, is just tries to read the situation and figure out how urgent is the flash, which flash is the best flash that I can use in this situation, and stuff like this. Does it kind of answer your question?
Yeah. I got some
feel
ideas.
Like, yeah, Because I think that's the best answer I can give you realistically. Like, I don't think there's a right or wrong, or like a something.
It's hard. It's hard
Yeah.
with communication and in the moment, and yeah, it's hard to like have too much code words and like, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Completely agree. I feel like there was some other thing. I mean, I wanted to do the Sprout thing, but I also wanted to talk about something else, I think. Probably I'll get back to it anyway. I'll share with you this Sprout thing that I learned. And this was again in the youth of my pro career, let's call it, where I specifically remember Speedy, who I was playing with at the time, told me in some round in practice or something. What I was saying was, I will peek A apps because they don't Molotov it, and I think I can get a timing. And I was always doing this, that I would tell what do I want to do, and then afterwards I would also explain why do I want to do it. And what he told me was that, we trust you. What you want to do, you don't need to explain it, you just need to do it. And that also cut out a lot of communication, because in my mind, it was kind of important for them to understand, why do I think right now it's good for me to peek apps? It's because I've seen this and that gap. And yeah, I think that is something that's maybe a little also up for debate. I could see the advantage in having a teammate explaining why. Like the same way a B player, instead of just saying, oh, let's take deep banana this time, it might be nice for me if I'm the other B player to hear, let's take deep banana now, because they never do anything, for example. But yeah, you are adding extra communication, which is an explanation of why you think it's good. Technically, if you trust each other, you don't really need to explain yourself. You don't really need people to understand why you called what you did. So I will leave that kind of up to people's own opinion. Most people I have played with as an AWP have said that, they just want me to call my peak and not explain why it's good. But I can see some advantages to it as well. So yeah, there is that. All right. Let me see. I don't think there really is any specific keyword on Inferno that people use. Not that I know. I guess another part of communication, which I don't think I've ever heard anyone really talk about, is that there is actually a real power to give strats names that you don't even have in your own playbook. So, for example, probably some of you newer Counter-Strike players haven't seen this. I don't know the lineups, but there was this very famous strat in CS Source that I saw a pro team bring out again recently. I know it as eyeballers, right?
Was Fallen, no?
What, sorry?
Was it Fallen that they just... Do you talk about the fake plants?
No, it was not a fake plant. I know what you... That was art, right? Or not?
That was art?
Yeah, I think so. Where he faked... went into smoke, did a fake plant, and then they went A, right? In CSGO?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically like a variation of eyeballers, what they did there. They did eyeballers with fake plant, which is like... I've never seen anyone do it before or since, but it worked really well. But basically, the idea of eyeballers is you get a deep CT smoke, and then you also have a side smoke. And what that does for you is you can, rush down the CT player, and you can go around and play the B side from ruins and from pool. So you are, as you know, a lot of CTs, they're jiggling with smoke, whatever. And when this player gets blind and gets contact, they will try to smoke, and then they will fall back. And as they're falling back, this smoke is popped, so they just ignore the side guy. They just immediately run down the ruins guy. This is a strat where I saw it recently being done by, I believe it was Tai Lu versus someone. And what was interesting about it is that because I've seen the strat before, even though I've never seen it in CS2 before that moment, I had a name for it, which was eyeballers, right? And that also means that if I am a CT even if I don't have this strat in my playbook, knowing what the strat is called, or at least having an agreed upon name with my team, is actually worth it, because then if we're playing on B, even though we will never ourselves know, like, call this round, if people understand what we mean when we say eyeballers, people understand, like, they can make the mental image as they are coming over. Like, let's say I'm long player, I'm rotating over, and they say, they're doing eyeballers. Then I know as I'm coming over here, okay, there's a deep CT smoke. I should probably break it. Maybe I can get killed on the people running ruins. Stuff like this. So I think that's something I've never heard anyone talk about before. And I think it's actually something that is important. Another thing that I think not many teams do, but I also think is very important for Team Counter-Strike. I've touched on it in a video, but I've never touched on it in a Gosu Academy session. It is the idea of having, when you're doing preparation for an opponent, what you will find is a lot of teams have a tactic which is almost like their identity. I could give you an example on Vertigo. I think I could potentially give you an example on Mirage as well. Let me see if I can give you, because I don't know exactly about the Mirage example, but okay, I'll just go to Mirage. I'll give you an example. I don't think I've had this specific scenario play out in a match yet, but maybe one day. So when my team is playing matches, what we do a lot of the time is that I'm doing, well, all the girls are basically doing their own individual anti-strat, but I am kind of the one doing the game plan and deciding what we do majority of the time. And when I do my anti-strat, sometimes I will see a team do a specific tactic. Let's just say in this case, the T's are doing this smoke, they are doing this smoke, and they're doing CT smoke. And then on these smokes, they have 2 guys lurking top mid and 1 guy lurking underground. This is something where basically any team could do this, but it is something that they run, let's say, once per match or something like this. It is kind of like a part of their identity. It's somewhat unique. And I had a team where we had a keyword for when teams have a signature strat, basically. Actually, I just came up with a good example from recent. Anyone who has watched my how to anti-strat video that I posted recently on my second channel will maybe have seen this, but I did some anti-strat for fun on Eternal Fire. And it's a little deep, so let's just talk about it. So there was the B lurk smoke that probably plenty of you know, and anyone who has been sort of keeping up with CS for a little while, Eternal Fire famously had this Wicadia lurk where they did a lurk smoke and then they did a left side smoke. And okay, my left side smoke was a little worse than theirs, but the idea was it became a smoke tunnel. Wicadia walked through it, ignored the B players, walked all the way around beach, walked to A, and killed the A player in the back. And this was something where that was part of their identity for a while. It was actually a strat that basically every single pro team and also teams that we were practicing and stuff like that would be trying to do that tactic to see if it would work. No one's using it anymore because everyone knew about it and knew how to play against it, basically. But now Eternal Fire have made, which I saw at Katowice, they made a new strat where they have, you know, left side smoke. They also have the lurk smoke, so it's kind of looking the exact same. But then they also have deep con smoke. And I noticed that this was a tactic that they used a few times at Katowice. So this was something that was very, in my opinion, specific to their identity. Like, it was a strat probably no other team would run. And the idea is it puts pressure on the Wicadia alert, but then with this con smoke, it puts pressure on the B pop, and you know, the con smoke also allows you to maybe go close in con for the B split. So it's a pretty cool strat. And yeah, this was a really long explanation just to say, if you ever do preparation on an opponent, or if you've played them before, and you know they have some specific call that is, you don't have a word for it, because there's no other team in the world basically that runs it, you can just use the call out like they are doing signature. And then everyone understands from the preparation, okay, these 3 smokes, we're playing against Eternal Fire. When this happens, we call out they're doing signature. And it's again a way to shorten the communication, right? Instead of saying, they did lurk smoke, and they did left side smoke, and they did con smoke. Just say like they're doing signature. And then everyone is on the same page. And if it hasn't been clear enough, signature then changes for each team. Then if we next day play heroic, maybe they have a specific mid take to a split rush, whatever. And then that will be their signature. So then if we see those nades, we say they are doing signature. And then everyone understands what's going on. Yes. Okay. That was
Kind of like when it's kind of
yeah.
like when people like just call out and say like they're doing the A execute a mirage. Like everyone knows that instantly.
Yes, exactly. And it shortens the communication, right? And I think something like an A execute is a strat that everyone knows, right? Like all teams have it, everyone understands how to do it in face and everything. So that's like an easy example. There will be some examples of rounds that specific teams do, or that you personally don't know the lineups for, but that you know teams can do, and then it can be good actually if you have a team to agree on what you call those strats, so that if you play against it, you can still call out what they're doing. Yeah. Okay. I think I got through the most important stuff. If you have any more questions, whatever, we can keep talking about communication. I'm sure I could keep talking about communication in general, but I think, the thing that I had at the tip of my tongue earlier, I can't really find it in my mind.
I have a question. One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a little bit puggy team and like some people are very like face it oriented, so
Yeah.
they're like a little bit more quiet, and they're not so very vocal or ready to like do the comms and like combo communication. Like it's a little bit slow on the communication side, so it's
Yeah.
not really it's not so easy to like get a grip on them, to get
Yeah.
on the same page fast enough.
Yeah.
How would you utilize players like that?
That's a good question. I think, I think that we could start a long debate about, do you want to let players who have weaknesses, right? In this case, your teammates who don't communicate that much. Would you want to... I guess there's 2 approaches to it. There's the approach of, let's find a way where we can play with this player, where their weakness becomes less of a weakness. And there's also the approach which is, let's improve on this player so that his weakness gets better. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Or vote him off.
Vote him
an
off?
example.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
It's like let's say City Mirage. It's like
Yeah.
he's a kind of mindless but mechanically gifted.
Yeah.
But it's very quiet. He just want to do his stuff on his own, but
Yeah.
not really quite understanding the timing that well.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of protocols around like playing around con. It's not so much dong
Yeah.
type.
I get you. I guess my start of what I said was just like, first of all, I think it's important you decide with yourself, are you thinking short term or are you thinking long term? because if it's a player where you are thinking short term, you need the best out of this player, you can try to adapt the team's play or put him in roles where he needs to do as little as possible other than aiming. But that's kind of like a band-aid fix. Like, you're not actually fixing the problem, you are making, like, you're letting the problem control you. And I think that's important. If you are thinking long term, the answer to this question, in my opinion, is you need to force this player to improve his communication. Like, instead of adapting to, oh, this guy can't communicate, you go with the approach of, we need to teach him how to communicate as good as everyone else. But if we just take the short-term example, I mean, one of the things that could be a an adjustment you could make is players who don't communicate that well are typically better suited at playing anchor positions rather than playing rotation positions, like playing con or playing short or even window, where you have to move in between sites and stuff like this. That requires far more communication to be good at it than if you're just an A anchor holding your spot. Like when I played with Robs, for example, in Mousesports for this one tournament, Robs was one of the best players in the world back then, and obviously he's only gotten better over the years. But I was pretty surprised about how bad his communication, well, I wouldn't say even his communication was bad, but how little he communicated. And at that moment he was playing A, I believe, on Mirage, and he was playing mostly anchor roles. Now he's adapted to playing more rotation roles and stuff like that, and he's overall probably communicating far more. So yeah, the easy option is you can put them on an anchor position instead. There they can focus more on aim and don't have to talk as much. Another thing you can do, I guess, is just you can play very structured. So you, like, it's actually, take this A example. When you run a set strat, like an A execute is, if you have pre-defined roles, so before you go into the round, this crazy guy on your team, whatever, who doesn't communicate that much, if he knows that he's supposed to go second man out, he's supposed to take this entry pathing and hold left side and whatever, you don't really need him to communicate that well, because you just need him to aim. And okay, now I've basically literally brought up every single team I've ever represented, but when I played in Complexity and I was standing in for Config, who actually has really good communication, and is overall an amazing player to play with, I basically got put into roles where I didn't have to do almost any utility because they had shaped their game in a way where Config always had his gun out, basically. And that he was always the first one running in, so he didn't need to talk all that much. He just needed to find the right timing of the flash and stuff like that. Basically, the less good a player is at communicating, the better suited they are to playing solo positions. And taking my current team as an example, the Dutch twins, Naomi and Chiara, they had massive communication issues when I joined the team. Even after the first season we were together, massive communication issues. I would say it's only recently that they are starting to communicate really good. And we were considering like putting them on anchor positions instead of having them in the traditionally star player positions, simply because it was difficult to play with people who don't communicate much or that well. And that will also be my advice. If you have a guy like this on your team, don't make it out as if it's an ultimatum, but make them understand that there are two options. One is learn how to communicate properly, or I'll write properly. Or the other is play anchor positions on CT. Because if you can't communicate and get that like chemistry going between players and stuff like that, it's hard to play rotation roles. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Perfect. I will touch actually on one more thing that came up in my mind with communication, which I think is probably the most important part of communication. And well, I have two, but they're kind of connected. So just this is a small tip. I can't prove it to you, but believe me when I tell you it works. If I am AWP player and I peeked mid and I saw there's no one here, and I rotate over to connector, whatever, this area, and then I'm holding top mid while my other teammate is holding underground. Just an example. If I choose to leave my teammate, I always have to, say that I'm leaving this area, but also if your information is for one person in particular, always mention them by name. It doesn't have to be like their actual actual first name or whatever, but the in-game name, whatever. Instead of saying I'm leaving con, say Debo, I'm leaving con. You're playing alone. And then just by using the name, you listen. Or the same way, if I have a B player called Billy Bob, when I'm leaving con, I'll be like, name, I'm leaving you con, you're playing alone, and then Billy Bob, I'm coming B now. And then my homie Billy Bob over on the B side, who's got knee problems from all the jumping, he will hear that information extra carefully, because normally a B player is maybe not listening so much to what's going on A or what the AWP is communicating, whatever. But if I mention him by name, he will pay attention to me. And that kind of feeds into what is then the most important part of communication, in my opinion. And that is Counter-Strike is actually supposed to be played as if it's a conversation. And I think 99% of players don't understand this. The good players understand this, but the worst 99% of Counter-Strike players, which is almost all Counter-Strike players, they don't understand this, or at least don't do it correctly. So if I am coming to whatever, if I am invited to your birthday and I text you and I say, hey, I'm going to be attending your birthday, then I am expecting that the person who is receiving my information gives me some indication that they have received the information. Otherwise, I will tell them the information again. So if I am saying, Billy Bob, I'm coming B now, so let's push B. If Billy Bob doesn't say anything, I am assuming he hasn't heard what I said. But if I'm coming over to B and I'm saying these things, and Billy Bob immediately says, yeah, or that sounds good, or okay, or we do it, or whatever, then he's confirming he has received that information. And so many people, especially in FACEIT, don't understand that concept. Like, when someone is talking to you, or even to the team, confirm that you've heard it. Because I cannot tell you how many rounds I've lost to, even at Pro CS, where someone has said, like, I'm leaving A. And then the A player doesn't say anything. And then as they are, like I'm leaving A. And then my A player doesn't say anything. And then, I'm leaving A, by the way. And then I will say, Johnny, I'm leaving A. And then Johnny will be like, yeah, I know, or something. So just always confirm. Counter-Strike is a conversation. The same way, if I say, can you flash for me? Then it's expected that I say yes or no. Like, even if it's not a question. They can be mid now. Okay. Someone just confirm that the information has been heard. Really, it's so important. It's such a small thing and it's so damn important. The same way you wouldn't be rude in a conversation. Someone's talking to you and you just ignore them. Don't ignore people in Counter-Strike. One last thing as well, which is also a topic that's up for discussion. I don't think there is a right or wrong on this one, but I have had this in the past where I am in a position. Let's say I'm close slope, and I ask my con player, can you flash ramp for me? And then sometimes the con player will say, yes. So they do the good job of confirming it, and then they will immediately flash slope. And then I will peek, and there's no one here. And my intention of my question was actually not to ask, can you flash for me now? My intention was, can you flash for me at all? Because I don't know if they are capable of, maybe they don't know the lineup, or maybe they are being pressured from con, or maybe they don't have a flash, or whatever. So, in my opinion, and again, I think this is up for debate, agree with your team, but the way I see it is, if I'm the guy close to slope and I ask my other player, can you flash for me in this position? I'm expecting them to say yes. When they say yes, then I as the slope player say, okay, I want it in 5 seconds. Then the con player knows I want it in 5 seconds. Or I can even just say, okay, be ready with it. I will call it in a moment. And then I'm waiting, I'm listening to footsteps, whatever. Now I heard a step slope, and I say flash, and then I wait, and then boom, and I go in and I kill everybody. I think that's also a point where you can definitely be assertive. Say I am default and they're coming out slope, and I don't have time to say, hey, can someone flash for me? And then they have to say yes, and then I say, okay, do it now. Then you can just be assertive and you can say, flash for me A, and then people know, okay, this needs to happen ASAP. Then if I hear someone say, flash over me A, then I'll just say flash, and then bang. Then the default player knows, okay, flash has been thrown, and the bang is to indicate now the flash has popped, and then boom. Also, I am personally I don't think it's necessary to say bang when you flash. As long as you give good sound when you flash, you don't need the bang. Because good players understand how long it takes for a flash to travel. The only place it kind of comes into play is if the T's are also flashing a lot. Sometimes you can be confused about which flash is actually your teammates. But personally, if my teammate is just saying when they are flashing, I can mentally do the calculation of when the flash is popping. And this will be the absolute last thing I say as well, because this is also one of the most common communication mistakes, is that I have heard, well, I've played a lot of Facets also recently where people, I'm asking them to flash, and then they just do it, and they don't say anything. This, I think we can all agree on, is very bad. But I've also had teammates where I say, flash for me A, and then they say, I'm flashing. And that is, yeah, a small thing, but it actually also makes a big difference. There's a very different, it's very different if you say, I am flashing, or if you say, I'm flashing now. Because it's important for your teammate who needs to peek with the flash to have emphasis on the moment when you throw the flash. So instead of saying I'm flashing, you can also just say flash, or you can say I'm flashing now, or anything where there is an indication of the moment where you release the flash, because that is very important. And I have so many teammates who say I'm flashing here, and then you have no idea. Are you flashing on when you said flashing, or when you said here, or when you just flash is coming? Okay, but when? How can I time this flash? So that's a really small thing that should be easy enough for everyone to do, but it makes a really, really big difference. And yeah, I guess that was basically 1 hour of yap about communication. So yeah, we talked about like a million things, and I really appreciate especially the questions as well. I know you came with majority of them, Dippo, and I really appreciate it because, yeah, it gave me a chance to talk about things that maybe I wouldn't have thought about myself to bring up in this session. Now that I am out of things to say, I will one last time ask you guys if you have any questions that you would like to ask about communication. It can also be about anything related to Counter-Strike, and it can literally be about what toothpaste I use. Really, you can ask about anything.
What toothpaste do you use? I'm joking.
This video is sponsored by or 4 out of 5 Gosu Academy students use this toothpaste. Yeah. All right, guys. No questions?
Not
I
right
think it was
now.
good. I think it was a good
Okay.
session, to be honest. I didn't think about when people were asking, like, hey, can you throw a flash? I didn't think, usually, just like you were saying, usually I'm thinking, oh, they want me to throw the flash, not like find out when they want it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a small difference in wording there, but the timing of the flash is so different. If you say flash from me B, then it's like needs to happen instantaneous, right? And then still it's the job of, if someone says flash from me B, it's still my job to come here and say flashing now, so the person can time it right. Or if the person says, can you flash from me B, then I say yes. Or maybe even better, you can say, can you flash from me soon? Then the person knows, okay, probably they don't want it immediately.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you like improve your communication in a team environment? Do you record your like session or practice everything you do to like listen to the calls? Because it's easy to forget while you're playing.
Yeah.
Or how did your team improve in communication? If that was like an issue, how would you fix the problem?
Yeah.
Or getting better at it?
I think honestly it's one of those things where basically everything in sports or in Counter-Strike or whatever, you will improve just by doing, right? Like the more you communicate, the more precise and yeah, immediate and assertive and stuff like this your communication will become. So I think part of it is just keep playing and it will improve over time. But also it's worth it for you to if you're playing in a team, that's probably the best environment to practice your communication. There will be times where you play a match and your teammate will say, oh, I thought you meant this, but you said that, and I was confused. And if you listen to that feedback, you can understand, okay, this is also something that's up for debate, but I know some people think that if a message doesn't get understood correctly, it is always the fault of the sender, so the person saying it, because the receiver can only receive the words they get, but the sender can change the wording. I think it's honestly bullshit to say. I think sender and receiver are equally culpable, I guess is even the word you could use here. But as a sender, if you get told that you said something that a teammate misunderstood, take the opportunity to think about what you could have said instead. And on the reverse of that, if you're playing Face It, and like I had a situation actually the other day where I was coming up slope. We were 3 versus 3. I was T side, and my teammate called 2 con and 1 CT. And then I saw one of my teammates fighting someone in jungle at the same time. And then I went up here and I jumped here and I wanted to peek con. And then I died from CT. And it was because the communication was not precise. He said 2 con, 1 CT. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, if there's 2 con and my teammate is fighting one in jungle, then it's 1 jungle, 2 con. But I guess one of the con players had, like already a few seconds ago, left and gone jungle, and the information was not updated. If you would have said 1 jungle, 1 con, 1 CT, then my brain would probably realize that someone was CT. But my brain completely ignored the fact that he said 1 CT because he said 2 con, and then I heard someone shoot from jungle. Then I was thinking, okay, 2 con, 1 jungle. So even when you are the receiver, if there's something you misunderstood, you can still take that opportunity to reflect on it and see how would I actually have liked to get this information, and then use that to better your own communication. So I know, for example, I would have liked him to say 1 con, or like, yeah, I don't know actually even what I mean, in this case, since they weren't 2 con, I just wouldn't say 2 con. I would just say like 2 around mid and 1 CT, or like, yeah, I don't even know. I just think 2 con is just wrong if he hasn't seen 2 con. And when he said it, it was like immediately he was peeking jungle. So it was just wrong communication. And by just thinking about how would I have liked to be told that I can also, next time I'm in a situation where I have to explain this type of situation, I can try it differently. So here, for example, maybe what I would just say is 1 con, 1 CT, because the last guy could have moved and I lost track of him, right? And if I would then come slope and I would hear, okay, 1 con, 1 CT, then I'm focused on that. When I then hear 1 jungle, okay, then I piece everything together. It's 1 jungle, 1 con, 1 CT, and then, yeah, I don't get mind fucked. So any opportunity where you confuse someone or where someone confuses you, reflect on it, and that way you can improve. Like alternatively, you can also just watch voice comm videos from professionals. One of the best ways to learn how communication is supposed to sound. I will say, from personal experiences, the voice comm videos that you watch of professionals, they are actually a lot of the times, I think they're communicating, I would say, not perfectly. Most of the time they are extremely stressed because they are playing, high pressure environment on stage, typically against the best teams in the world. And I think even if those teams would reflect on their own communication after the match, they would say, wow, we were so insanely stressed here, that there was still room for improvement. But you can still learn a lot about how communication should sound, but then just think probably it needs to be a little bit more calm. Yes, I hope you felt like that answered your question as well. I don't hear you, but I assume so.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is one of our what we do is like repeats, where we're just repeating and like try to learn. But I think it's a little bit. It's easier to like play on your own in CS and you do stuff, and when you make mistakes, and it's hard with communication because it's between 2 players. It's not just on yourself and your own play. I think it's difficult for us to like learn the same way we learn like in CS when we try stuff and what works and what not.
Well, you have the added benefit of all the toxic people in Faceit will be quick to tell you if you told them some information they didn't understand. Then they're going to yell at you, and you will know that they were confused. And if you play in a team, your teammates should ideally tell you, hey, I didn't understand what you were saying here. I think even though it is something that happens between 2 people, I think if you pay attention, you will just as easily notice when something gets misunderstood as when someone misses a spray. At least if I'm saying the last guy is con and my guy is just peeking CT like this, I can tell he didn't understand what I was saying. And so yeah, I think maybe you're right that it is a little more difficult to notice, but if you really pay attention to it, I think it can be just as easy in a way to improve on. And I've always had the mindset that you should work on your mechanics just as much as you work on all the other things related to Counter-Strike, like your personality, your communication, your work ethic, your whatever. So yeah, pay attention to your communication. See if there's something you could say better. That's my best advice. And just reflect on what's happening. It will help you a lot.